Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Boom's Pop-Up Podcast. I'm your host, MrBooMStickXL. And on today's show, we're going to be revisiting Mass Effect Andromeda and discussing what went wrong at BioWare when this game was being made and what the company needs to do to make things right with fans moving forward. But before I do this, of course, I would like to introduce my very good friend and someone you should be following on Twitter and being subscribed to his awesome YouTube channel, Dean5578, also known as Creating Beyond Limits. He's on popular shows like Coffee Casuals and Consoles. Welcome, dude. Thanks for being here.
Boom, like this is like the third, fourth time that I've been on, and it's just always like amazing, and I'm always happy to be here. We have good talks, good discussions about some things that need to be said and just talked about in general. Lots of stuff that we're going to be talking about today to do with Mass Effect. Lots of people probably in the chat are going to have lots of stuff to say because lots of people are going to have different opinions on what they thought about Mass Effect Andromeda. So it's going to be a good show, and I can't wait to talk Mass Effect.
Oh, yeah, dude. Listen, anytime we can hang out, it's always a good time. It's greatly appreciated. But you know what? When this show that I do is something a little different than your regular podcast. I like the one-on-one that I have with my guest, and I also like tackling the one topic. And whether that's going to be a preview or that's going to be a revisiting of an older game, very similar to what we're doing today with Mass Effect Andromeda, I like to treat the viewer as if they are tuning in because they've never played the game. So I just kind of want to read a quick briefing, so to speak, of what exactly Mass Effect Andromeda is and where the game starts to take place. Okay, so just bear with me, folks, if you're in the chat. The game begins within the Milky Way galaxy during the 22nd century. And this is when humanity is planning to populate a new home, and that quest is called the Andromeda Initiative. The player, which of course is us, assumes the role of either Scott or Sarah Ryder. And basically, they are military recruits who join the initiative, and they wake up following a 634-year journey trying to find a new home for humanity. Of course, events transpire where, trouble happens with the mission. And obviously, you take control of your character, whether that be the sister or the brother, and the game takes place. Now, when I first heard that they were making this and they showed the initial trailers during, of course, like the E3s, right? Because we had a trilogy behind us that everyone knows and loves from the Xbox 360 days, I had really reaching high hopes for this game, simply because I could not put down the first three. As a matter of fact, to this day, Mass Effect 2 is in my top 5 games of all time. One of my most treasured achievements in all of my achievements, my nearly 250,000 achievements that I have, is getting the
suicide mission.
Actually, it was getting everyone to live at the end of the second one. Everyone on that mission lived, and I jumped out of my chair in excitement when I got it, simply because I really cared for every one of those characters. Dean, when you first saw Mass Effect Andromeda and they showed, some gameplay and they gave you a kind of brief synopsis of the story, how excited were you for this game?
Man, the second I finished Mass Effect 3, I was instantly... I know lots of people were really disappointed and annoyed with how Mass Effect 3 ended and stuff like that. The way it was just like, pick your color, green, blue, whatever the choices were, and that was it. But they eventually added extra stuff to kind of help it a little bit.
They did.
But I wasn't that annoyed because it was more about the journey for me. And overall, I looked back and I was like, this was an amazing journey. The ending probably wasn't 100% perfect, but you're not going to get 100% perfection with everything. So I was happy for the journey. So the second I finished Mass Effect 3, I was ready for the next adventure, regardless if it continued the story of Commander Shepard. Obviously, I would have liked if they did continue it because there was a character we were already super attached to. and we spent so many hours with the trilogy. So I didn't mind that they were going to leave him. I would have preferred, or like that. I don't really mind, but I was ready. And leading up to it, every N7 day, every E3 show, like I was just waiting. Like, when are they going to announce it? When are they going to show more? And then there's just plenty of times where they were just showing like early work, like screenshots, and just talking about it without actually showing any footage. But when they finally did, I was like super hyped. I was excited. They were talking about the open world and being able to drive around again, and I was just like, I can't wait for this. Take my money. Like, everything they showed, because I didn't know what the game was going to be like on launch, but everything they were showing made it look awesome, and I was super hyped for the game.
Yeah, I mean, look, you and I were talking pre-game, and we both played it on EA Access prior to the game releasing, and it was something that it felt like Mass Effect, but it kind of didn't feel like Mass Effect. And what I want to go into right away is, what do you think? In your opinion, as a massive fan of 1, 2, and 3 of the first trilogy, and with such high hopes for Mass Effect Andromeda, what changed in the game from the trilogy to then that kind of like made it feel not like a Mass Effect game? Was it because it was too open?
Well, the movement, like the change to make it more open world, definitely affected it. And for me, it was in a bad way, because like I've only played 15 to 16 hours of the game, so I haven't seen too many planets. But so far, the ones that I have been on haven't really done anything to hook me. I kind of found it quite boring most times. Like, lots of the areas are empty, lots of empty space. And I do like the movement system. I do like the combat. Like, I didn't think there was anything wrong with Mass Effect 3. I thought Mass Effect 3's combat was at a good point. Obviously,
Yes.
they wanted to adapt and evolve it to make it more action oriented. So I didn't mind it because it was still fun. And as long as the story's good overall and it has a decent combat system, that's all I'm mainly looking for. But the movement to the open world without filling in lots of space was what kind of made it a little bit of a bore. I didn't find the characters that I got as like interesting. Their backgrounds weren't as detailed, or
Yep.
there was just something about the characters. Maybe, I don't know. I went into Mass Effect Andromeda super hyped and excited, so I couldn't have been biased or like just comparing them to the other characters. If I was doing it unconsciously, type of thing. Like, because you're obviously gonna judge it to the past games. So regardless if I was doing that, but I just didn't find the characters as entertaining, as fun to watch or listen to. So with the characters not being as good and the open world kind of being empty, I think they were like the biggest downfalls from what I got in the first 15 to 16 hours that I played. It just didn't hook me.
Yeah. Well, listen, what I want to do is I want to read an exact quote of how the developers describe Mass Effect Andromeda, and then we're going to kind of pick this apart, because I think in the opening sentence it's already failed. According, then this is directly from Wikipedia, but the information was this is how the actual developers described the game. Mass Effect Andromeda was incorporated a lighter tone than previous installments in the series. Okay, a big no-no right there. It utilized an open world element and placed an emphasis on exploration. Now, that's good, but like you said, when it's too big and there's nothing going on, it's just too big. And I think that's what kind of killed the flow of the game, because I think that going from finding a settlement, having a firefight, it sometimes was 10 or 15 minutes before you found another one. And I think that maybe it was just too big considering where it came from. It continues with, many of the series' traditional gameplay elements remain, while others are modified, such as combat, which is less cover-based and more mobile. The game is the largest in the series and offers the player the freedom to focus on either the main quest or side quests. And here's something that was we didn't talk about it yet, but we're going to get into it. The score was composed by John Pisano and aims to match the game's mood by capturing the adventure of space exploration. Now, I am going to say this. the music in Andromeda was not as good, in my opinion. I could be wrong, than the trilogy. What was your take on the score for this one game as opposed to the trilogy?
From what I remember, it kind of was similar, but not as epic. And the music didn't play in the best parts. I found I thought the music in the in the original trilogy was well placed,
Yes.
and it really got you into the mood. And when action was happening, like the music that went with it was perfect. But I don't remember too much of Andromeda. I did play it for a few, like 3 hours last night, because it has been a very long time since I did play it, because like I played it on release or the week before with EA Access, and I was playing it for a little bit after, and I just had so many issues. Like I don't particularly remember any certain tunes that went with the game. Like overall, I think there was a bunch of like different pieces, like I said, with the characters, the open world, the music to go on top. There just was lots of things that were kind of out of place, or just weren't up to scratch, like just weren't good enough from what I was expecting from a Mass Effect game. So when you put all of these things together, that's why it didn't hook me. It just didn't deliver on many aspects that people were hoping for.
You know, here's the thing. I played the full 10 hours, and I normally don't do that. Usually when you get when you get the EA access, which I think is still one of the best deals in gaming today, if you're an Xbox owner, I played the full 10 hours, and I was so invested in what was happening that I was like, okay, I put 10 hours in, I'm golden, I can't wait to get this game, right? Full 10 hours, no BS. Then the game comes out, and I kind of start playing, and I have currently just under 30 hours into the game. And I am going to revisit it because I almost feel that I'm cheating myself as a player not to have beaten this game. Now, granted, it's not the worst game I've ever played, not by a long shot. It's just not the Mass Effect that I wanted, right? Like 2, in my opinion, is probably the best of the franchise. It might be one of the best games on the Xbox 360. If you feel differently, give me a shout out in the chat. But I just loved everything about it. I loved the characters. I loved the story. I loved the atmosphere, the music, everything about 2. I was hoping to find in 3, and I mean in Andromeda. And I like you, I felt let down by the characters. I think that when you are introducing a new game, the start of what was supposed to be a trilogy, you're supposed to the characters are supposed to be interesting and engaging, and they didn't even meet the standards of the lowest tier characters from the trilogy, in my opinion.
Yeah, like even like any of the characters in the original Mass Effect, I think even the one that people probably prefer the least, I think is more detailed and overall better than most, like nearly all of the characters in Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. Absolutely.
So yeah, it's just the characters like in Mass Effect, like the original trilogy, they are such a big part of the game. Like I think overall where Mass Effect Andromeda also went wrong was like the original trilogy, everything was well balanced, you know, going from point A to point B. When you have an open world game, like because Mass Effect is so story driven, when you go explore a planet and there's not too much on it or not much to do, you're disconnected from the overall story for long periods of a time, which will also make you not interested. Like in the original trilogy, because it's more linear, you're just going from one place to another, you're going at your own pace, but it's always like story driven. Where in Mass Effect Andromeda, because it's open world, you can go at your own pace, but the world to explore just isn't as interesting. So if you choose to do it for a decent amount of time, it'll probably be a downfall because you're probably going to get disinterested and think that the game's not going to go anywhere. So what do you think? Hello?
Sorry, I was on mute. Did not realize that. Sorry about that. I
That's okay.
apologize. Yeah, you know, I'm typing in the chat at the same time, trying to read all the notes. It's quite confusing. But the issue is this: when you start Mass Effect 2, right? First of all, spoilers. I'm sorry if if I'm going to say something that's going to upset you. Mass Effect 2 came out in 2010. We're in 2018. If you haven't played it, walk away for a second. You start out dead, obviously, and then you are immediately awoken to a firefight. And then from there, you're introduced into one of in my character, one of the best bad guys in Mass Effect was the
Elusive Man.
yes, the Elusive Man. Thank you. I could not think of it. The Elusive Man, in my opinion, because he was so secretive and so you know, you didn't know what was up his sleeve. You don't know why he was
like he
helping you.
manipulated you.
Yeah, he manipulated you from literally from the beginning. And after 30 hours of play, I didn't find any characters like that. You understand? So, you know, immediately Mass Effect Andromeda fails as a space opera because you're not introduced to anyone, you know, and that's the thing. 30 hours I played, and to be completely honest, outside of the main character, his sister, and the father, and maybe one other character, I can't name them unless I look at my character sheet. And that's pretty bad, man. You know what I'm saying? That's pretty bad.
Yeah, like when I think of the original, it's like you have Rex, Garrus, Liara, Miranda. Like you can name lots of characters off the top of your head because you've connected to so many of them, and there's probably ones that you connected to even more, and they're probably like, you know, your main two characters on every mission that you're more likely gonna bring with you. But when I played Mass Effect Andromeda, it was all like, I guess I'll bring you, and I guess I'll bring you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you kind of like, well, I have these 4 characters. I guess I'll take the Rex-looking guy, and you know, maybe I'll take the guy that looks like Morden Solus. You know,
because you're hoping they're going to be
as comical. I mean, listen, in Mass Effect 2, the main 2 characters that I used was Thane and Legion. I mean, I thought they were both really in-depth, amazing characters, and I used them pretty much through the entire game.
And they had a fantastic conclusion to their stories.
They certainly did, man. And you know, look, the thing is this: I am going to like, it's the summertime, and all of us are now trying to pick off games from our backlog. And I would really like to finish Mass Effect. And I got to give her a big, giant shout out. Luca, who's a good friend of mine and a good friend of the show. When I put Mass Effect Andromeda down, she kind of talked me into playing it because I believe she beat it multiple times.
Nice.
And she kind of talked me back off the ledge, and I started playing it, and I'm like, you know what, Luca, you're right. It's not terrible. It's certainly not the worst game I've ever played, but it just wasn't Mass Effect. That's the bottom line. Now, what I like to talk about, and I think this is kind of really gonna be a big part of the show. And something that's important when we're talking about the Mass Effect Andromeda as opposed to the trilogy is who developed Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, before we answer that question, let's talk about who developed Mass Effect, the first trilogy. And that was the extremely talented A-team of BioWare that's located at their Edmonton studio. Right? That's the AAA big time BioWare team. Unfortunately, Andromeda was handled by a new team out of Montreal. Now, granted, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I can make a game better than them. As a matter of fact, I can't code if my life depended on it. I'm just a person sitting behind a mic talking about a game. So they're talented. They just weren't as talented as it needed to be to make this game an epic first part of a trilogy. Now, what a lot of people don't know is the original trilogy was built on the Unreal Engine 3. right? And that was back in those days. That was pretty much standard fare. Unfortunately, Andromeda was built using the Frostbite 3 engine, which is a good engine, but the problem is the B team, as they're being called by not just me, by many people within the media, had to construct all the systems, tools, and assets for this game from scratch. And that is why it was delayed so much. And that's why when we're talking pre-game, some of the bugs that people got, the wicked looking faces and the freezing and all the bugs that were all over the place were probably due to them not being familiar with the new Frostbite engine, and at the same time, maybe they just weren't as talented as they needed to be to make a game as epic as this. What's your take on it, Dean?
Well, I think the move was a big cause for the problems. Obviously, they weren't as used to that engine. They've been using Unreal for the original trilogy, and then they move over to the Frostbite engine, which is most known for Battlefield. So it doesn't really have a big space known for the open world type game. They did do Dragon Age Inquisition, which released before Mass Effect, and that was on the Frostbite engine. Yes. And that game released. I'm pretty sure it was the A team that done Inquisition.
I believe so. Yes.
So that game released, and from what I remember, I didn't really run into too many issues or anything like that. And I think Dragon Age Inquisition suffered overall with the same open worldness, kind of being empty spaces, but that's off topic. But yeah, I think the engine was like a big challenge for the team, and I really do believe that if they were giving like another year with the game to polish up what they already had, to fix some things, probably make some dialogue changes or something like that, improve the writing in some areas, I think we would have been playing a different game and talking about something that would have been received a lot better. But EA, for their reasons, they had their flagship title, Mass Effect, that has already had a massive fan base, and they know people are waiting. So they, for some reason, thought, hey, let's release this game that's not finished. It has problems. And people are still going to buy it. It's going to get decent reviews, and it's not going to wreck the whole franchise. And they were wrong. And if they just made the extra investment to give them more development time, they would have been able to support this as a franchise, and we'd be talking about the second one by now, or teases, or like something. What's going to happen. But yeah, the engine swap, not having the time and struggling with it, I think was our biggest challenge, and they just ran out of time with it.
Now, following the game's release, BioWare released several patches in response to critical feedback that they were getting. But then they decided, and this is where things really went wrong, and we're only going to know the truth if somebody from that team actually writes a book, and I hope that they do. They basically abandoned this game. In the history of gaming, and I've been gaming a real long time, I have never seen a mainstay series with a trilogy as big as it was behind it be abandoned. And how do you know that happened? Well, they had a ton of single-player downloadable content that was supposed to come out and basically explain the cliffhanger ending, and they just scrapped it. And I don't, when you think about that, how big Mass Effect is. I mean, it's had comics, it has toys, it has clothing.
It's basically giving the middle finger to your fans.
Yes, with everything, with the fan base that they acquired in 3 titles prior to this. Again, there was a possibility of a movie coming out. You had all this merchandising. You had a 4th game in the series. The collector's edition was $300 that came with with the remote control car. I mean, there was a lot of fans sitting on the fence waiting for it to play something new Mass Effect, and they basically just pretended as if it didn't happen. And I think that if they're gonna, and we're gonna get into this later on in the show, how they're gonna revisit it. And thankfully, Casey Hudson has returned as the product manager there. Basically, this is his Mass Effect is his baby, and being that he's now back in charge, they are going to revisit it, but at least we know we have that. But in your opinion, because you just said it, as a fan of the series, someone that has purchased and spent hundreds and hundreds of hours playing this game, did you feel insulted by BioWare and EA, more specifically, for completely abandoning the project?
Well, the quick answer is yes, but the more gamer answer is get ready to censor a lot. Yeah, like I said, I stopped playing Mass Effect Andromeda due to bugs. I was aware that they were bringing out patches. I was looking at their patch notes. I was just waiting. I was like, okay, this game's in a very rough state. I do love Mass Effect. I'm willing to give the game a chance. I'm not impressed with it so far, and I'm running into too many issues. I'll return to it in a few months.
Right.
And every time they were bringing out patch notes and adding like improvements to the multiplayer stuff, like I was reading it and seeing like, they improved the facial animation here in this scenario and stuff like that. And then one day, not too long after the game released, probably a few months, you go online and you see an article basically saying Mass Effect on hiatus, blah blah blah, all this. And I was just like, because this was before it was official, all the rumors. And I'm like, no, this can't be. Like, Mass Effect's too good of a franchise to kill over just by this one slip up, you know? It's already earned its place. It has a fan base. And then it came out, it was official. And I'm like, seriously, like, EA, like, what the, like, why would you do this? Why would you cut and run saying, oh, yeah, all single player DLC that we had planned? Scratch that. I'm pretty sure they weren't even going to do the whole comic story until they got the backlash that they did. They were just like, no single player content. What happened to the Quarians? We're not even going to charge it for it because we're not doing it. So it's like, I was so devastated. Like, Mass Effect is in my top 5, top 3 probably. Like The Legend of Zelda, Alan Wake, like just good story-driven games, good gameplay. Like Mass Effect 2, like the Mass Effect trilogy had it all, and Mass Effect 2 was just perfection with an amazing ending. What, like you said, the suicide mission, certain people could die, all of them could die. Like literally all of them could die. You could die. Like it was just so good. I was not ready for that mission when I first played it. And I'm not gonna lie, I lost a few people, and I went back, and I also got that achievement that you got by fully investing. And and it's because you care about every single character in this franchise and that game. You wanted all of them to live because you liked everyone. You obviously like certain ones more, but you like them all. And when Mass Effect Andromeda released and had all these issues, and they just dropped ball and run, like I was fully offended and pissed off. Like, I wanted to rage and just, like, angry tweet here, but I wouldn't have done that. And, like, in the end, EA made the decision. Mass Effect Andromeda put the Mass Effect series on hiatus. So that's going to be something that I'm not going to be too happy with when I look at Mass Effect Andromeda, because overall, I know it's not the game's fault to be considering all the stuff that happened behind the scenes with the game. It did release, and it's not the worst game ever made. It's just because it has the Mass Effect name on it that we're so critical towards it, because we know what this could have been, and we know where it could have went, and it just wasn't treated right. Is it as bad as Judgment? I'd say overall, Mass Effect Andromeda is probably overall a better game. And
you're talking about Gears of War Judgment, correct?
Yeah, like, you know, games that you put in the franchise that most of the fan base are like, that doesn't exist. Like, I want Mass Effect Andromeda to exist, you know? I just wish I had more time, because overall the story's not that bad. The gameplay is good. And EA...
Well, definitely the combat is the highlight of the game. There's no doubt about that if now again, that's what we'll get into. The next question that I have for you, that I, of course, will be answering, and of course, this is for the chat, because I like when the chat gets involved. What worked and what didn't work in Mass Effect Andromeda? So I want to kind of really dig deep into this one, because it's easy to say what didn't work. Oh, like bugs and the story, and it was too open. And the characters, they were boring, and I think we've kind of nailed that. But I don't. The game isn't a 4. You know, it's a low 8, but it's still not as important in the series as the first trilogy. In your opinion, what worked for Mass Effect Andromeda?
I thought because I haven't seen the whole story end, but the ability to pick between the brother and sister, I think that really worked. I think it's cool that the other one is still in the game in some way. I know at some point they do have some involvement, probably not as big, but I think it's a pretty cool feature, and I like that that was there. So I think that worked.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the gameplay worked. I think was different. I'm not going to say it's a big improvement because some people could prefer the Mass Effect 3 gameplay, but it's different, but I think it worked. I didn't find anything negative to say about it. I had fun when I was playing it. I had fun when I was doing the multiplayer with it. So I think the gameplay worked. When we go to the open world stuff, I think it could have worked if done better, with more time. The planet's more life on them, more stuff to do.
Yep.
It could have worked, but unfortunately it didn't. The potential was there. If they were to say they were going to do another open world Mass Effect game, but give it the time it deserved, obviously, if they say they're going to do another one, I'm going to be a bit hesitant because I know how the last one went. But if it was done right, I think it could be good. I don't mind if it went back to the original roots of the way it was, being more linear and stuff like that. I wouldn't mind that either. But I think the open world element of Mass Effect could work if done right. So what else didn't work? Obviously, the release date of the game, having the character animations, the facial animations, and what was the line? My face looks tired or something like that. The famous line that everyone knows, and the animations, and obviously the released version of the game didn't work, and the internet was very happy, and they didn't mind putting all these montages and clips together. They were very nice about
some of the memes that were just frightening. They were terrifying.
One way to say it. Give me nightmares for weeks. So yeah, there's a bunch of things that didn't work, and lots of the things that they did work were things that they took and changed or just made some their own versions of it, their way they think it was going to evolve. I think there was more negatives than positives, but there were things that, like I said, with the whole characters, I think that worked. And the gameplay worked overall. The characters in the game didn't work because I think they needed a little bit more time, especially when you first get characters, you need to be hooked or
they have to hit. They have to hit when you're introduced to a character that's going to be a squad member.
We already said you want to pick the character because you like them already. They had a nice first impression, and you're like, yes, I would like to know more about you, so I'm going to put you on my mission because I want to see what you're going to say during this quest, and if we're going to have any options to talk or say something. Do you have a loyalty mission? I'm going to want to do that at some point. So, but like I said already, the characters didn't work. I was just picking who I thought looked cooler or something, or who was going to be more helpful given the mission, and I was just like, okay, I guess I brought you on 2 missions, so it's time to give you a break and pick this person. But it wasn't because I wanted to know more. It was just I might find something else, but overall, I'm not too impressed with the characters. So
that very good points. Absolutely, very good points. For me personally, what worked was the combat felt fresh. And it felt punishing. I say only 30 hours for me in the way I game is not a lot. I should have put 90 hours into Mass Effect Andromeda. I fell off the wagon. I will be jumping back on the wagon to try and knock down a few more titles in my summer backlog. The combat was great. I did really enjoy the fact that there were 2 different characters to choose from. I thought it really opened up story elements that you cared about both characters. That was important. I did like the driving of the vehicle, which I don't even remember what the name was, unfortunately. I should have put that in the notes, and I didn't. I thought the driving was fine. As opposed to the original, when you drove it around, it always felt like you were fighting the controller. As opposed to this, actually felt like you were moving a vehicle through the open world. I really enjoyed that. And I don't get scared off by open world. I think that a game with a lore as big and important as Mass Effect does have, even if it was a new, a new area, it just, for me personally, I liked the idea on paper. It's what we got at the end game where the product just didn't fit what they were selling. Certain open world games are intimidating. A good example of that is The Witcher 3. I've personally never beaten it. I've put over 20 hours into it. That game, for me, as a guy who likes open world games, is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, too open world. And sometimes in Mass Effect, I felt that it was just too big. And I know that's almost like a sin to say, because you want bigger and better in the next game. That's what we all strive for as gamers and as customers, right? You always want, this one was this way, but you wanted bigger in the next one. Well, you know what? Sometimes bigger isn't always better. And I think we learned that very quickly in Mass Effect Andromeda. The one of the low points were the characters. Like you were saying, they were very uninteresting. I'm looking at my character sheet list here, and the two that I used almost throughout the 30-hour time was Vetra and Jal, because those are the two characters that I felt comfortable with. But even when when you had conversations with them, it just wasn't engaging. I felt it was almost like an afterthought. And you're not playing this. This isn't a character versus the world. Like, for instance, the Assassin's Creed, where you played the brother and sister. You just had those two characters, and it was versus the world, and it was a fantastic game. I love that Assassin's Creed. This should have had this. This was a story being told that you had the help of others. And the truth of the matter is that I didn't care what happened to the characters, and that's a big letdown, considering that I gave a real shit about everyone, so much so that I played through Mass Effect 2, lost 2 characters, and then replayed it again to make sure I didn't lose anyone. I didn't get that, and when you get a game that if you feel like it's a chore to play, they failed. You should be amped and willing and able to find time to play that game. That's why I never finished it. So what I want to talk about next is the Metacritic score. Now, we all understand that Metacritic as a whole is rubbish. And for the most part, they have proven that not only is the site biased, and they're more involved with console war nonsense than they are actually reporting the correct news, because this generation, there's no doubt about it, it's been pro Sony for many good reasons. But we have to talk about what we have, right? We pencil to paper, this is what we have. And according to Metacritic, the Xbox One overall score, rated by, I think it was over 100 different reviews for the Xbox One, is sitting at a 76. If I were reviewing this game, I would be giving it an 80, so that's not too far off. Then you move on to the PlayStation 4, and it's currently sitting at Metacritic at a 71. And then you move to, last but certainly not least, the PC, which I believe had the most problems. It's sitting at a 72. Now, the overall score from fans is sitting at a horrendous 4.8 between the 3 consoles. This isn't like, again, sometimes, in Metacritic, and you, Dean, you've seen this, an Xbox game will go up that's an exclusive, and people will throw zeros at it because they're PlayStation fanboys. And the other way around. The Last of Us 2 will go up there eventually, and people will be throwing zeros at it because it's a PlayStation game. Absolutely ridiculous. You have to judge a game based on what the game is. I don't think it's a 4.8. I'm okay scoring it an 8.0. I will revisit it. But Dean, if you were sitting down to write the review for this game, what would you be comfortable giving it so that not only would your credibility as a writer slash game journalist be intact, but as a fan of the series, you would be able to say, okay, I'm proud of what I did to write this review. This is my overall score. What would you be scoring this game?
Okay. Overall, right now, with the hours that I have put into it, like I still have so much left to do in the game. I do plan on going back to it. Like I said, when I played it last night, I didn't run into any issues. It was nice. It was a good change, and when I played it last night, I just continued my save. And because it's been so long, I didn't really remember what's going on. I was just testing it out to see what was happening, see what the gameplay felt like, if it was as good as I remembered. But because I played it and I didn't run into any issues, it certainly has moved up on the list, and I do plan on going back to it as a lot sooner than I originally intended. And I am going to start the game from scratch because
Nice.
I don't want to jump in. I'm going to give it a fair shot, new character, let's go type of thing. But if I was to put a score on it from what I played and feel comfortable letting people know, I'd say Mass Effect Andromeda is a new take on the Mass Effect series. It's gone open world.
Right.
It does have some issues. Some of them are gone. The animations have been fixed somewhat. There are a lot big improvement overall what the game was on release. The characters aren't as engaging, but they're better than most characters in other games because there still is a lot of bad games out today, unfortunately. But
yeah, I mean,
Mass Effect Andromeda, I'd give a solid 7.
Okay.
It could go up higher when I play the game and finish it, but if I play the game, finish it, and that cliffhanger really is a bitch, well then I'm going to be super annoyed, even more annoyed that they canceled the DLC, and I'm going to have to read some to find out what happened. But 7, I think it'd be a good number to give because it's not a bad number. 7's good.
Yeah, it's that's considered good. Correct. Yes.
So I'll be saying it's good. If someone played it, looking at my review, thinking it's a 7, so they're like, okay, so it's going to be an alright game, it's decent. And if they think it's higher, well, then at least they played it and they gave it the benefit of the doubt and went with it. So it'd be better for them that they gave it a higher score. At least they enjoyed it more. But I think a solid 7 out of 10 in its current condition, the way it was and the way it was left, I think 7 is a nice fit for it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's the wonderful thing about game reviews. It's your opinion. Everyone is entitled to give their opinion, good, bad, or otherwise. I don't challenge it unless you're giving me a 0 or 2, and you're going to tell me you played 30 minutes.
Actually, I give Mass Effect Andromeda a 0. Let's have an interesting discussion.
Well, look. According to and I pulled this. This is okay. Everyone knows what Forbes is, right? According to Forbes, Mass Effect Andromeda is considered one of the worst reviewed in the series. I don't think that's a big surprise. One had its faults, but of course it was the first in the series. 2 was just absolutely mind blowing. 3 is on the level of 2, in my opinion. I really enjoyed 2, and I mean, we really enjoyed 3 just as much. A lot of people will disagree with me, and that's fine. But I want to go into 2 interviews that BioWare general manager Casey Hudson had, and I think it's important because if you are a Mass Effect fan, this is exciting. While being interviewed by PC Gamer, Casey Hudson had this to say. The failure of the Mass Effect Andromeda first part of what was supposed to be a trilogy was a huge letdown, and it has refocused BioWare. Now, I kind of want to pick this statement apart, and I want to get your opinion on it. First of all, from what I understand, Casey Hudson had left prior to Andromeda being finished. And considering that Mass Effect as a series was basically his brainchild, and he holds it very dear to his heart. If you hear him talk about it, the man is passionate about the Mass Effect franchise. So obviously he was devastated by the fan feedback and what basically happened to the franchise after he left. Thankfully, he's back at BioWare, like I said earlier. Does a statement from the man that created the series, like it says, the failure of Mass Effect Andromeda has refocused BioWare. What does that say to you as a huge fan of the trilogy?
Well, that says that they're aware that the game didn't really have the time to cook. Uh, Hopefully, they're gonna somehow put their foot down and they'll be able to have a discussion with EA if they need more time. And they have evidence of what would happen if they release an unfinished game, especially if something similar was to happen with Anthem. That's a new thing they want to take off the ground and have as a new franchise. So I'm pretty sure EA would want to give them more time, because if they release that game that already had lots of negative attention towards it already because of the whole BioWare, are they going downhill because they release bad game after bad game type of thing. So I think overall, I think they're in a better place now. I think they've heard everyone loud and clear. They know what didn't work with Andromeda. They know the game had issues. Hopefully, it's not too long away until we get the next Mass Effect game. I think 7 years would be appropriate, because they're going to be on Anthem for like at least that's a live service game, so they're going to be supporting that even after it releases. And how much development team they put towards that, who knows? But whenever they do start development on the next Mass Effect game, that's going to take at least 4 years. So it's a long way away. So I just hope that it's not just talk to keep people happy. I really do hope they do plan on returning to Mass Effect, and they're going to go full force.
Yes.
They're going to give it the development time that it needs. They're going to invest, and hopefully he doesn't leave during development of the next Mass Effect game, because then that would be pretty bad. And it's like,
no, you know what? I doubt that's going to happen, but I want to read the paragraph from another interview. In the second interview with WCCF Tech, Casey Hudson also stated that right now, and this is not a surprise, all of the company's focus is on Anthem, and for good reason, because they need to prove to the world that the team that made Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and Jade Empire, along with all of everything else that that made Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, can and will be back and surprise gamers across the world. And I expect very big things from Anthem. But this is what he goes on to say. But that they are going to return to the Mass Effect franchise in the future. It is not gone. It is not dead. He has confirmed that. This is my question to you in the chat. With the first statement and now the second statement merged together, with Casey Hudson, the main guy that was responsible for us loving Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, do you feel that the next installment will hit on everything that we loved about the first trilogy? Take it away, bro.
I think so. Will it return? Will Commander Shepard return? I actually don't know. I think they might try to do that, because it'd be something that would definitely get a hook instantly. And obviously there's still going to be questions, because people aren't going to forget about the whole thing that happened with Mass Effect Andromeda. But people will be looking at the game a lot, because they're like, they're continuing the story of Commander Shepard. Because lots of I don't even know how they'd do it if they were to bring Commander Shepard back, because like, what ending would they go with? Like, well,
there were three. There were three, and it would be, they would, whichever one of the three was the better, they would have to use, obviously, to bring him back. But the question is, we all loved Shepard, but he had his trilogy. I mean, again, I don't want to say that I wouldn't want to see Commander Shepard back, but we know his story. The question, they're a talented enough team, the AAA BioWare that we all know and love, to make a character as engrossing as Commander Shepard. They could do that. I think that taking the angle of one character and giving the player the ability to make that character male or female and design that character from the ground up, so that character is your character in your story that you're going to be playing, is important. And I think that they could do that. But where else do you think that they need to go? Or do you think they just need to possibly just reboot the series?
Oh, a complete reboot. I don't know if I'd be happy with that, because the Mass Effect universe is so big. They can, like they've already done with Andromeda, they can go anywhere. I don't think they need to reboot it, because then that's kind of like erasing the original trilogy in the same universe. I'd like if they had it in the same universe, even if it's not even mentioned. But as long as we know it's still kind of canon in the same universe and stuff like that, I'd be happy with. What I would like is for them to be bold and actually continue Mass Effect Andromeda's story. I would like them to fully invest.
That's a bold move. I like it.
I would like them to have a big sit down for whatever amount of time is needed and figure, how would we resurrect this one? Like, because it has potential. Like you said, you give it an 8, I give it a 7. It's not a bad game. It has potential. Like,
right.
They just need to have a better written story and give it the time it needs. Make the adjustments where people get feedback. I don't think they needed to abandon it. I think they could return to it. Obviously, if they were to return with the original characters and stuff like that, it would be getting a lot more negative stuff right off the bat, because it's a continuation of a failed game. So I think it'd be bold for them, and I'd probably prefer that. I wouldn't be disappointed, because, like I said, Mass Effect Andromeda is a good game. I do plan on returning to it, and my score could get even higher by the time I finish it. So that's what I'd prefer them to do. I wouldn't like them to reboot it, but if they were to go a new route, I'd like for them to kind of do something similar with Mass Effect Andromeda, different universe, have some of the returning races, and maybe be able to pick what, if you want to be a human, a Turian, and stuff like that. Maybe.
I never thought of, that's a really good point, dude. Wow, bro, that's really thought provoking. I never thought about that. What about the next character being an alien? That's like freaking awesome.
Like, there's so much they could do, and they don't have to reboot it. But I would prefer if they stuck. Like, saying it now, obviously my opinion could change, but right now in my mindset, because we're talking about Mass Effect Andromeda so much, I think it'd be pretty bold of them and bold of EA to actually fund another game to continue in this. Because then at least that would show that they didn't give up on it too. Like, they did now, but at least they would be like, there is potential. And imagine Casey Hudson had a really good story, or has a way in his head that he wants to resurrect it and fix it, basically.
Yeah,
if they were to fund that, I think that'd be awesome.
Listen, you literally stole my thunder, because I was actually going to say that. I am right there in your camp, and you're on your boat, and I'm letting you drive. I absolutely think that it's almost insulting and very disappointing as a fan of Mass Effect that, listen, let's just say, for instance, you're one of these gamers that absolutely loved Andromeda. They're out there. There are plenty of people. There are people that hated it. There are people that thought it was okay. There are people that thought it was good, and there are people that thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. What if you're one of the higher tiered gamers, and now you come to realize that you spent 75 hours playing through this game, you got invested in all the characters, you love the lore, you love the open world, you love driving around, I believe it was the Mako, I believe that was what was called, and now it's stopped. It's like a brick wall came up in front of you, you slammed into the brick wall, and you're just sitting there with a concussion. I think what you said was perfect. Revisiting, being bold and saying, okay, what didn't work in this game, we're going to fix it. What worked, we're going to make it better, but we're going to continue with Mass Effect. And I think with Casey Hudson leading the charge, we might see the continuation of this story. And I think that because it's Mass Effect, it deserves it. And I think because the Mass Effect fans followed this game from first images to the actual buying the game, deserve it as well. No doubt in my mind, I think that this series and the story that they're trying to tell now can be revisited and fixed. We've seen this happen in many games. I go right back to The Witcher. The Witcher 2 was a good game, but it wasn't The Witcher 3, right?
Yeah, because they did the same thing by going open world with Witcher 2 to
Yes,
3.
right. Now, Assassin's Creed 1 as opposed to Assassin's Creed 2, tremendous jump in quality and storytelling, and everything that we hated about 1 was rectified in 2. I can see that happening here, and I think that they should do that. But a good friend of the show, DJ Singh, who's here almost all the time, brought up a really good point, and it was one of the topics I had in our closing remarks. Now, if you're gonna boo me, it's fine. You want to throw rocks? I have a hard head.
Put a helmet on.
I know that the word remaster is usually looked at negatively, and it's frowned upon. But in my opinion, do you think that it's time, because we've all been calling for it, for a Mass Effect trilogy an HD remaster of the original 3 games in 4K 30 or 1080p 60, however they were going to do it, remaster the originals, put it out in one giant compilation, and I think the world will be ready for the next Mass Effect. Do you think this is something that, even though EA is known as the whore masters of the gaming realm, there's no doubt about them, right up there with Activision, I would be totally down for an HD remaster of Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. I doubt anyone from any of those teams are listening to this very small podcast, but if you are, the fans want it. What's your take on this, Dean? Do you think it's time?
I thought it was time years ago.
Okay.
Like, when this generation started, like the first 2 to 3 years, there was plenty of HD ports, semi remasters, and only some of them were actual remasters. Because they were pouring lots of games over and stuff like that. I was always one thing. I probably even have on my Twitter some tweets going back at EA, give us a Mass Effect remaster, because Mass Effect, like we said, is in my top 5. It's one of the best games I've ever played. Mass Effect 2 is. Overall, the trilogy is fantastic. Each game is amazing, and just to see them have some sort of work to touch it all up would be the cherry on top. And I really would. I'd buy that, no problem. I'm happy with the versions that are now, but if they were to invest time, make it 30, 60 FPS, improve the textures, they don't have to even touch the voice acting, because that's one thing from all of the games has been perfect.
Yep.
So all they have to do is the inner work, and they don't even have to go all out like the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy. Even a half done job, anything to improve it. Because 2 and 3 are perfectly fine to me. The one that needs the most work is the first one, because the combat is a little bit shaky in that one, and overall because it was on the 360 early days,
right,
really early days. Obviously, it hasn't aged as well as the others, but the story in number 1 is fantastic. The dialogue is fantastic. It's just the gameplay and environments that probably need some work, the most work, to touch it up and remaster it. But if they were to bundle them all in a game,
charge me $60, dude, I'll pay it.
Even if they were charging 80, or I'd still buy it, because for me, if I included all of the DLC,
and it would, yes.
Mass Effect 2 had so much DLC, and it was all amazing. The Liara DLC with the Shadow Broker, that was hands down fantastic.
Yes.
Mass Effect 3 had the Citadel, which is so because the characters we were talking about were so strong in Mass Effect, the original trilogy. The Citadel DLC was basically just a party with all the cool characters.
Yeah,
it was a way to say goodbye, but
It
was amazing. And the Leviathan DLC, and there's so much extra content that came out after the game. Not all of the DLC was perfect, but lots of the ones that were amazing were really amazing and really pushed the lore forward and just had more questions and some answers. So it's just amazing. It'd be totally worth it if they remastered it and actually done a decent job. but they would definitely need to invest more work on the first game compared to the 2 and 3.
Yeah, well, look, let me just say this. This is something that needs to happen. As soon as I'm done with the show, I'm gonna get out there and I'm gonna tweet at Casey Hudson. I'm gonna tweet at Mass Effect, and I'm gonna tweet at EA. If you see the tweet and you follow me on Twitter, share that on social media, retweet it, favor it, and get after them, because I you know, there are so many original trilogies that would make. And again, I understand that so many games come out, and do we really need it? Well, in my opinion, I think the world does need an HD remaster of Mass Effect. There's just no doubt about it. I feel the same way about Dead Space, but I don't want to get too much into that because we're talking about Mass Effect, and we will eventually. I may do a pop-up podcast sometime later down the line regarding Dead Space, because that's another series that needs to be addressed as well. But I think today's show was absolutely fantastic. Once again, I thank you for coming on the show. I mean, listen, you know, when I bring people on guests, this is a more intimate show than your Breakfast with Boom, because, you know, it's one subject, it's one guest, and it's always important to have a guest that is passionate about the topic. I mean, obviously, Mass Effect was a big part of your gaming life, and immediately when I asked you on, you were like, "Yeah, let's do this." So I thank you for that. But you know, we're trying to get you to your 1,000 subs, and I think you deserve it, Dean. You put a really good product out there. You're really passionate about what you talk about. You don't really, you know, you don't show up to your microphone and half-ass it. I will say that. Every one of your shows seem like you know what you're doing. I really enjoy all the content. And you're a fantastic part of Coffee Casuals and Consoles. I don't think the show would work if you weren't there. Tell everyone where they could follow you, because they need to.
YouTube, Create and Beyond Limits. I do gaming videos, reaction videos, topless videos, all of them at different times, because, you know, schedule and available time to do videos. You don't always have as much as you'd like. But yeah, I do plan on doing a review for Fortnite. I already did one a while ago, but I'm going to do an updated review because that game has changed so much in the last few months. It's ridiculous. And I do streams every now and again, not very often, but that's mostly on my Mixer. Sometimes I do both stream on Mixer and YouTube. I'm always open to suggestions. Like Boom said, I'm trying to hit 1,000 before my birthday, literally a day next month. So, well, a month and a day. So I am not too far away. I'm very happy with how I've grown already so far.
Yep.
YouTube is a hobby. I do it because I enjoy it, and I just really like doing it. And I'm always happy to be on any show with anyone that's as amazing as Boom. Talks good games. We always have a lot to say, and it's always very fun, and the time literally flies by. Like, holy shit, it was an hour already.
Yeah.
And you're there thinking, how are you meant to talk about one thing for an hour? Click your fingers, an hour's over, and we're like, but we were just getting started. And yeah, it's just amazing. And I hope to be on Breakfast at Boom if one Friday is ever available for us when I'm not in work, because that always seems to be like a bad day for us. But hopefully someday in the future, hopefully soon. That'd be also amazing. And
oh yeah, listen, dude, you have an open door ticket. You contact me whenever Friday you need to be on. That you're going to be off, and it's a done deal. That's end of story. No questions asked. But again, I want to thank the chat. You know, we had almost 30-something people watching, and I know that this is a newer, smaller show. It's certainly not as popular as Breakfast with Boom. I would of course like it to eventually be that way, because I really care about the work I put out there. But I wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for my good friends in the chat. And, you know, I really appreciate them coming out. Once again, moderated by my very good friend from across the pond, UK Dazarus, which I'm going to be on his show this Wednesday. As a matter of fact, this is a busy week for me personally. Not only am I going to be on the Dazcast on Wednesday, I'm doing something new on my channel called Gaming News at Noon with Boom. It's a 30-minute program. Basically, what I'm going to be doing is it's solo, so I'm a little nervous about that. And I'm basically going to be giving you the top 15 gaming news stories, almost as if it was like a newscast kind of a thing. I'll be interacting with the chat, not as much because obviously I'm running this solo, so there's no real time for dead air for me to chat, but I will be, calling you out live on the air. And then Thursday, I'm going to be a guest of the Dragon X podcast, which is another phenomenal show. And then on Friday, I will be doing an announcement for Friday's Breakfast with Boom guests. 3 of the guests are new time guys, which I'm very excited. Some are in the chat right now, and I will be making an announcement on that probably on Thursday morning. Once again, I want to thank everyone that's in the chat. I want to thank you, Dean, for coming out. Enjoy the rest of this ridiculously hot weather that we're having, especially in New York. It's gross, but enjoy the day. And thanks again for supporting the channel. It's greatly appreciated.
See yous.